So I watched Beef on Netflix.
Super helpful. Maybe?
The first episode starts off very comedic and not surreal or absurd, but it has that uncanny feel that Swarm.
I'm so sorry. Name.
Or Sorry to Bother You have.
Stick to the script.
Hey, hello. Mr. Davison, Cassius Green here. Sorry to bother.
That's what I was starting to get from the first episode of Beef. And I'm really into it. It just makes you feel off, unsettled. Those are just, I don't know. Unsettled is the perfect adjective for it.
Driving, and then there was this guy who...
Maybe we should start doing the gratitude journals again.
And then I feel like there was a huge tone shift after the first episode, and it becomes a lot more heartfelt and introspective, and these characters are genuinely trying to have moments of bettering themselves. They're not quite as unhinged as I thought they'd be throughout. Now, good storytelling has rising action and a climax, and we definitely have that, but I thought, honestly, for all of episodes 2 to 9, I was like waiting for them to just derail. They do have a few moments where they lashed out again with their like intense anger, but I was expecting more of that unsettled comedic feeling. And then we see that again in episode 10, and I'm like, okay, bow tied, full circle. I love that. It just wasn't quite the tone I was expecting from the first episode / the trailers. It was almost disappointing, but then it's such a good show that it makes up for it. It has amazing cinematography, acting, stunning. So yeah, the visuals, the key components of good media are there. I think it's a very beautiful show and very worth watching for people who don't even care about all of this poetic stuff. If you just like watching action and like having a good old time, this is a good show for you too. I think it's an 8.8 out of 10. I really enjoyed it. The protagonists switch places, and that's obviously just supposed to represent how they really truly see each other unlike anyone else has ever seen them. They are a different side of the same coin. They like, you know, they're exact parallels of each other, which we saw from the beginning, and like them both yelling out their truck.
What the fuck you say? What the fuck you say?
Say it again! I dare you to say it again!
They are the same person. So on brand for them being parallels of each other, they both stuff their faces when they're upset. And she did this as a kid. And she starts to try to bribe her own kid.
Do we have any candy to bribe her?
Kind of the way Dre is in Swarm. They're repressing a lot of their feelings and trauma and just trying to shove it down with food. And it obviously manifests in this anger, this uncontrollable, unhinged anger. It's funny that it's called Beef, which is obviously just another word for feud or fighting, but they're both eating those chicken sandwiches. And I wondered if she goes to Burger King to eat that chicken sandwich because Paul told her that Danny does that, or if she just happens to like those as well. But also chicken in a show called Beef, they could just have something with beef. I feel like they maybe have done a play of words there. She crawls into the hospital bed and like the lights all turn different colors. I was a little bit confused at that, I'm not gonna lie. After the crows become this like surreal, absurd. Could argue that they died out in the wilderness and everything after was them like going into the bright light, all that kind of stuff. It could be like in their head, but I don't think so. I really do think that happened. It brings to light some themes that I think a lot of people can resonate with. I don't know if a lot of people have this much like unhinged anger and would go to these extremes.
You're fulfilled. I just want to know if I gotta get to where you are.
Everything fades. Nothing lasts. We're just a snake eating its own tail.
I personally resonate with that, and I know a lot of other creatives, like artists, tend to feel that way. So this show has a lot of symbolism and allegory. I love the episode titles and the paintings. They're really great. However, the artist, David Cho, I saw a video of him admitting to being a rapist, and that's horrifying. And I also saw a lot of Asian Americans talking about how this show has amazing Asian American representation. There aren't any forced stereotypes. It's just Asian people existing in their own lives. It's not forced. Amy has that rich wardrobe where like there's the no brands, you know, like you're elevated above brands where you're a quiet luxury. So like a lot of that like shapeless, neutral beiges. And I looked it up, and apparently that's supposed to represent her trying to be someone she's not, but she feels caged in. Posture is very like rigid. I love that Beef shows and doesn't tell. We see the carbon monoxide thing, like you can deduce that he's trying to kill himself. He doesn't explicitly say it until the end when he admits it to Amy. When the firefighter says, yeah, like some idiot did the wiring in 14 gauge wire or something. If you remember when he's bragging to his parents that he did it himself, you're like, oh, it was him. And then the next shot, we just see a picture of the 14 gauge thing, wire. And you're like, yeah, but it's not so explicit. Like, yes, he admits it to Paul at the end as well, but good storytelling, good writing. Show, don't tell. They all make these series of decisions that puts everybody in danger. Nobody meant for it to get that far. Like the people robbing the place didn't know the mom would be there, and the mom shouldn't have been there. And then she shot them. Jordan, things would have been fine if they had just like stayed sitting there, but who just stays sitting there in that situation when you're getting robbed? They were running off, and then it was like the wife's fault for closing the door to the panic room and killing her. But like ultimately, it's not their fault directly, but they did start the series of events that ended up here. And then I was like, oh yeah, I guess that's why her husband's that mad and wants a divorce. I wonder if he still would have wanted one if she had just cheated. He's saying he didn't cheat, but that's emotional cheating. That's cheating. And so that's another indication of really great writing. All characters have flaws. It's not black or white. This is just the normal, natural human experience. You know, we have some good and some bad. She has this problem with conditional love. The husband and the daughter's love don't feel like home or like enough. But a child is just being a child. When she's being like, I'll give you a hug if you give me candy or whatever. She's a child. Relax. And also, absolutely no love ever should be unconditional if it's toxic or abusive. So her husband not being okay with what she did, for example, is okay. I think she tried very hard with her daughter. I rarely saw her freaking out around her daughter. She was so gentle around her. The epitome of gentle parenting. She actually did an amazing job, especially considering what she's dealing with. It's hard for most people to not yell at their kid, never mind if they have these extreme anger issues and trauma. From episode 1, I was like, they're gonna end up together, like hooking up or something, falling for each other. And we saw like a brief foreshadow of that.
Hi.
Hi.
Is he home right now?
He won't be home for a while.
And then she sleeps with his brother, and I was just like, interesting. She tends to, with, Paul and her husband, go after these gentle, well, Paul was gentle until he started being a dick to her. These gentle people, and it's like Katniss needing Peeta instead of Gale. She needs the peace over the war. And I do think Danny and Amy can understand each other unlike anyone else can, but they will ultimately like be each other's destruction. You can't sustain a life of so much anger. They did finally fill up part of the little holes in their hearts, but then like come back to reality. They're gonna argue at literally every single thing if they were to be together or even to be friends. How do you think the husband would feel that she's gonna end up caring about this person that put their entire family in danger? How do you think Paul's gonna feel? And I don't think Danny could ever get over her having had sex with his brother. If we see a season 2, which I really, really hope so, I want to see some of these questions answered. I think it's going to be very messy, and I do think they'll like have a lot of really beautiful moments of connection, but ultimately they'll have to split ways because there's no way, what is it called? A fuse lit on both ends. It's just, it's gonna explode.